Cerberus needs a new toy.
Yes.
I'm on it. Note to self, bring Cerberus to chew upon.
A cat's life is hard. You should always pamper them.
No. Excellent. This will do.
Thanks.
Hello and welcome back to the Smite Pro League, brought to us by our good friends over at Prime. If you do not have a Prime membership, you should probably jump on that because you get free shipping, music, movies, and more just with a Prime membership. And then if you link that over to your Twitch account, you get free games and free stuff to go with the games that you already have. So make sure that you are making the most out of your Prime membership. And thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being this title sponsor of Season 9 of the SPL and finding so much great stuff for all of the viewers out there and for us here in the studio. My name is J-Mag. I got Mifflin joining me fresh off the cast, now on the desk as we get prepared for our second set of the day, the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors. And I think the setup that Dave had before was maybe a good indication of how this set will go. Depending on the Jade Dragons that we get and depending on the Oni Warriors that we get, this could be a 2-0 either way or a very close 2-1 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams have shown that at times they could just dominate, right? The Jade Dragons, when they're firing on all cylinders, feel like they're unstoppable, and the same could be said of the Oni Warriors. So I think it's a question of consistency, and I don't have the answer to that. I don't know which one of them is more consistent.
Well, we'll have to see which one brings out the consistency today, our second match of the day, in our first day of Week 4 of the SPL. We had the Olympus Bolts get a 2-1 over the Tartarus Titans just moments ago. Now we move on to the Dragons and the Warriors, and then tomorrow we get the Bolts and the Kings, Levi's and the Valks. We got all kinds of great matchups to round out our fourth week of our second phase. And taking a look at the standings, with that win from the Olympus Bolts, they bump themselves up to the top of the standings for now. And the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors, 3rd and 5th seed, but still sitting at that same standing, 3 and 2. Win today will elevate those up one spot.
Yeah, a lot of implication on the standings and the rest of the phase dependent on this matchup. I'm really thinking that both teams are going to probably come out the door with some new strategies today. We've seen, even in that first set between the Bolts and the Titans,
Look at his
I would
shirt.
argue completely different looks at both of those teams. So it feels like maybe the most recent patches have been a transitory period for the SPL.
And we did see some of the change-ups, at least as of last week. We saw some of the mages make their way into the dual lane, and I'm talking the non-traditional kind of mages that, you know, we're more accustomed to seeing in the mid lane is what made its way over there. Things like Freya, obviously still sticking around. And for a player like Vote on the Oni Warriors, that's right up his wheelhouse. I mean, he has been playing the Freya since it was available, at least at this level of play. Once again, the buffs to her made her a very enticing god to be picked up. And Vote has been pretty much running that any opportunity he's gotten the dual lane.
Yeah, I feel like Vote is a very slept-on player, right? Like, he is dominant. He's dropped the NBK from his name, but you can't take away what that title implied. He is a natural-born killer. He is just dominant given the right circumstances. Doesn't have to be the Freya, Chernobog, standard hunters, doesn't really matter. He is always capable of getting into these team fights. He's always willing to get aggressive. I mean, even in the last couple of clips, Vote's in the front line. He is getting active from minute 0, and as you said, Freya, one of the best selections for this guy, and certainly one of the best selections in Smite in general right now. I believe it was Zapman that had said, yeah, Freya used to be a late game god, and she used to be a mid game god. Now she's early, mid, and late. I gotta think that just bodes well for Vote.
Yeah, especially with the buff that did come to her pulse, the extra damage. Has hit a very slight nerf this patch, has been partially reverted back. It initially was 15 damage at all ranks, now toned back about 5, so still a nice little boost, that extra damage at that rank. But couple that with the Conduit gem, I mean, it's given Freya so much pressure in those lanes. And Vote has just been a player, as of recent, who's not afraid to take these 1v1s fight. You see a half HP Ho Yi and now full health Fenrir jumping in. Most players probably not willing to take that fight, but Vote has been one to try and at least stand his ground.
But Vote is a player, and I think the Oni Warriors as a whole kind of treat him as such that he's going to be alone on an island. We don't often see massive rotations over towards the dual lane. Vote, for the most part, has been trusted by his team to just hold his own in lane, then rotate to the team fight. And I think a lot of his picks are reflective of that. If he wants 1v1s, he's picking guys that 1v1 on their own, things like the Ul or the Hou Yi. If he wants to scale in the late game and just be there for his team, Chernobog and Freya comes to mind. I think he is certainly a player that is worth facilitating, but the Oniwarriors at times have shown that they are very much so willing to play through either mid or the solo lane. More often, the solo Nika has been a star for this squad.
And while Voda has been a little bit more standard in his play style, we have Panicat on the opposite side, who's been kind of anything but standard with his picks. And if you weren't here for the SPL waiting room and you're wondering, man, what's that little purple crown on top of Panicat's head? He's the MVP, the most valuable primer from Week 3 of the SPL. A dominant performance out of him. A 7-0-7 Freya game, a 4-3-6, a 4-1-3 Yu Huang game. All of those just in the exact same set against the Scarabs, not even including the fact he had a 5-2-6 Hou Yi and a 7-0-5 Chernobog. All of these in the exact same 2 weeks of play out there. Panicat has been popping off, and he's been doing it with a multitude of gods.
And he has just been dominant in lane. I mean, that was up against Stu, where you're talking about those stats, the Jade Dragons up against the Solar Scarabs, and every single game, he got Stu like stuck in the tier 2 tower. He was taking fights in the purple buff, at the red, on his own. Panicat, another player that I think we don't see too many rotations towards his lane, but more so because you just trust Panicat to do whatever it is that he wants, and he does it incredibly well. Even this Yu Huang, I had questioned. I was casting this, and I'm like, man, why are you taking Yu Huang in the 1v1? Why do you really want him in the dual lane? Panicat, he said to me, well, yeah, I was just going to dominate Stu. It's just like a good matchup. If he misses Banish, I'm just going to win. I was like, well, what happens if he hits Banish? He's like, he's not going to hit Banish. And that was the end of the conversation. So Panicat, a player that I think maybe even personifies the entirety of the pathos of the Jade Dragons. Play with confidence and just do what